And a good Monday afternoon to you. Welcome on into Lunch with Claibs and Joe here on claibsonline.com. I'm Joe Roderick, joined alongside by Mike Claiborne, who you looks like you got a nice tan on that cruise ship this past week.
Yeah, just a little bit. I was out in the sun just a little bit.
Yeah, everything here is shut down because of the ice.
So I heard.
But hope you're enjoying
Well, it's going to be 83
and,
here today. 83
All right.
here. But although it's supposed to get cool this weekend, it's supposed to get like in the mid to high 70s.
Poor thing.
Yeah,
That's Thursday. I'm flying to Phoenix, so I mean,
well, take a sweater. Take a sweater. It gets a little chilly out there.
I was looking. I mean, they were in the 40s last week, so I'm a little up in the air right now about what I'm going to wear. I got a half marathon Saturday morning. I don't know what I'm going to wear.
Well, I would take some warm weather gear.
I need to go hit the clearance rack at Walmart and see what kind of long sleeve stuff they have that I can just throw on the side of the road.
Go by Marshalls.
Yeah,
they got a lot of that kind of stuff.
Just find a $4 long sleeve shirt and wear it and pitch it at some point during the race. But you were out on the Cardinal cruise. Who all did you see out there?
Well, we took out Tom Pagnazzi, Tom Lawless, Ray King, who we've not seen in a while, Kerry Robinson, and Danny Cox. So it was a good group of veterans, guys who had all played, guys who had all, ironically, they had all managed at some level and coached at some level. So it was great to hear their insight about the game, this direction, and just how things worked. And, you know, all those guys have great stories to tell about their experience in St. Louis. Ray King is a riot, and I think, that whole Tony era player, they have different stories than the Whitey guys for sure. So it was fun. Good ports of call. So it was good, but it was good to be back here. Got back in on Saturday. So yesterday was nothing but football. And Saturday night was nothing but basketball. So I am whistled out for the most part.
When I assume, I know you drive by it probably every day. When do you start going down to Roger Dean every day?
Well, I walk over there every day. Well, I walked over there yesterday and today. There's a few players that are already here, kind of working out, hitting in the cage and stuff like that. And I would imagine this week we'll start to see a few more guys fall in the door. But there's some activity going on over there.
We will talk a little more baseball in just a bit later on in the show today. But we have to start with Super Bowl 57. We know who is in the matchup there. Next week, I will be down in Phoenix all week long, Radio Row, Monday through Friday, all other kinds of events all week long. And we will be there all week, courtesy of fine folks like Munganass St. Louis Acura, Munganass Salt Toyota, Western Illinois University, Trice Consulting, and Fast Eddie's Bon Air. Claibs, it's Eagles, it's the Chiefs, it's the 2-1 seeds facing off against each other in the Super Bowl. Your initial thoughts on the matchup?
Not surprised. I think if you recall, I told you to beware of the Eagles from day one. So they don't surprise me getting there at all. Kansas City had a different road to hoe. But I'll tell you there's a lot of things about yesterday's game that stood out. It shows you when you're a first teamer and you're a third teamer, the difference there is. And I'm talking about the receivers that Kansas City had. They were guys who were like spot receivers. But when you had to put them out there for every down, they just couldn't do the things that the number one guys could do on a regular basis. But overall, I thought they were two very entertaining games. And I know why San Francisco, they may want to blame a lot of things on why they didn't win. They might want to start with the fact that they got 4 guys almost killed this year as far as quarterbacks are concerned. Their defense took some really bad penalties yesterday. And, they had some guys on defense that really didn't step up. Bosa being one of them. He got off early, and then after that, they were pile driving him. He was nowhere to be found. So I thought there were a lot of different reasons on why they lost. Officiating really not having much to do with it.
Yeah, the 4 quarterbacks they've gone through this year. Trey Lance gets hurt early on. Jimmy Garoppolo comes in. He gets hurt. Brock Purdy had been near perfect during his run as the starting quarterback. It's Mr. Irrelevant. And then he gets hurt early in that game, and they have to go to Josh Johnson. And I sent you his rundown of his career, Claibs. He had more stops in his NFL or his football journey than Octavio Dotel did during his MLB career.
I mean, we didn't even see if he played for Matthews Dickey. I mean, at the rate he's gone through, but there must be something about him they like, because guys like that continue to get chance after chance after chance. But he got hurt. The problem was, man, they couldn't protect anybody, and they got one of the best tackles in the game in Trent Williams, and they couldn't get it done. And it's unfortunate because San Francisco was a pretty good team. But, man, once you got a team that knows you can't throw the ball, they just tee off on you. And my concern now is with Purdy. He's got an ulnar nerve issue, so he might need Tommy John. So what happens if he gets Tommy John? We won't see him until, 2024?
When's the last quarterback that has had to have that?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because
often.
It's going to affect their throwing, but that has to be a lot different of a recovery, a quicker recovery than a major league pitcher. The major league pitcher because just the different torques and the twists you're putting on your arm as a pitcher on the elbow. Quarterback, it's the same motion over and over again, where a pitcher, you are coming from a different way.
I'm not sure if I agree with you on that. You have guys who go 3/4. You have guys, and we've seen Mahomes go sidearm. So every ball is not over the top, So I'm going to hold off on that. That's probably a better question for Dr. Rick, because he's got a podcast coming up, but we ought to find out. Maybe that should be one of the questions. The biggest difference. I know that football players or baseball players back in the day, in order to strengthen their arm, they would throw footballs, and Whitey used to hate it. But every guy knew that threw a football, in batting practice or on the field, ended up having one of the better throwing arms. And I go back to a guy named Glenn Wilson, who threw as well as anyone during his era, and all he would do is throw football. So I say that only to say that there may be a different sort of stress on the elbow that we don't know about. I see where you're going, where if you're throwing a slider or a cutter and things of that nature, that
you're
may
throwing
have
95 miles an hour.
Yeah, but you're throwing something heavier than a baseball too. So there's a lot of things that go into it. So we'll leave that up to professionals on the recovery element if he has to have surgery, and let's hope that he doesn't.
The Eagles, you have been on with them since day one. It took me a while to get on board. You look at how they went about winning the game this on Sunday yesterday. 4 rushing touchdowns in that one. They didn't, for the second game in a row, you did not rely on your MVP candidate Jalen Hurts to go out there and sling it around and make these big plays with his arms. They really do just go in there on both sides and just beat teams up, beat them into submission.
They do. Physically, they're as tough as anybody. They push people around at the line of scrimmage, and that's where they won the game on both sides of the ball. They really stifled the 49ers run game. And this is before Purdy really got hurt and they realized that they were going to be short. McCaffrey had a couple of good runs. He ran through some tackles, but at the end of the day, they just couldn't get it done. And they've been doing that all year. Their offensive line might be as good as any group that we've seen in a long time. And I was looking forward to the Johnson-Bosa matchup. Bosa got on this pass a couple of times, and then after that, it was a wrap. Now, in watching that game, I thought the right tackle was getting out of the stall a little sooner, and they never called him on.
They haven't been. I feel like they've been letting that go a lot this year.
Well, here's what else they've been letting go. When a guy's in a set position, when those offensive line, they get up and start pointing at guys, trying to draw somebody out, they don't even call that anymore. Or when guys lean back and let the quarterback know, hey, here comes a blitz. There was a time you had to be still. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, they don't call it. I don't know why. I'm sure there's some rules official that can tell me why, but it's not being called like it used to be. But overall, I thought they were dominated. And, you think about Trent Williams, who's one of the best. I'll tell you the best part of the game, or the thing I was hoping to see, when Trent Williams grabbed that guy and slammed him to the ground. By the way, he grabbed him from behind, unbeknownst, and he was giving up about 100 pounds in weight. When he and Ndamukong Suh were chirping, that's the matchup I wanted to see, because Suh was wearing his ass out. When they were running those tackle twists inside and he was going outside, they couldn't do anything with him. Mm-hmm. And so I was hoping that he and Trent Williams would lock horns, because Trent Williams has a short fuse. You remember when he wanted to go with Richard Sherman when he was with the Redskins? Remember at the end of that game when they were about to fight? So, I mean, but he's a volatile guy. He's roughed up some people before, but I just thought it was more frustration than anything else with how they handle things. They just didn't have an answer. And it just goes to show you that how you have to have a quarterback in order to be successful. And I think the league's got to take a longer look at the third quarterback rule for postseason.
The thing that's been talked about the most today so far has been the officiating in that Chiefs and Bengals game, and some of the non-calls, some of the other calls that were made throughout the game. The mulligan, or the second third down, if you want to call it, that one, when you see all of the camera angles and you see exactly what happened, that one is much more justified than any of the potential missed calls, any of the holdings, non-holdings that could have been called and weren't called.
Well, see, and I agree with you. But here's the thing we had to take into account. The officials let them play for the most part, okay? So when you let them play, you have to be able to accept just because you let me play, that means the other guy can play too. So we're going to have some differences of opinion, but that's the way you wanted the game. I thought the officials were pretty good yesterday. I think that when you get caught up in the emotion of what's going on, people have a tendency to overreact. Along with this, I think most of the people who watch pro football don't have a clue on what they're watching when it comes to rules. And I think that's one of the reasons why you see the networks now have a rules person in the booth with them. So there won't be this second guessing or just wondering. You've got a person who actually knows the rule. Now, you can differ on him taking care of the officials on the field. But at the end of the day, he's reciting the rule in verse, unlike people who assume they know the rules. And that's one of the things about football compared to the other sports. First of all, most people never played it who watch it. Secondly, most people, even more people, don't know the rules. So they assume they know what's going on, but they don't. And therefore, they feel like, oh, he didn't know what he was doing. And by the way, we want to single out a referee. It's a crew. They only know a referee because he's the last guy who gives a word on what the infraction is. But there's some other guys out there working, and they have to have a good game. They take crews, and these guys know where to be on the field. They've been working together all year long. So I didn't really have a problem with it. And the final thing about this is you can't tell me that the players were more flawless than the officials, because I'm of the belief for every bad play an official you think makes, there's one guy on your team that didn't make a play on a down that might have cost your team even more. And I'll give you a good example. That right tackle when they switched over Clark, he had no idea what to do against that guy. Nothing. And he got beaten early in the game by Carlos Dunlap. So I'm saying to myself, if Dunlap can get him, I know Clark can get him. So, that to me was more of a turning point in the game.
What you said about the people that think they know everything. I don't know if you saw this tweet by Reggie Wayne yesterday. I guess he was watching the games at a cigar bar yesterday, and he said there was some guy in there talking, and at one point said, I probably got more experience than anybody at football in here, not knowing who was there on the other side of the bar. And Reggie Wayne said so many eyes looked at him, he thought he needed a shower afterwards.
Yeah. That's why I don't go. You know what? I'm going to tell you something, man. That's why I don't watch big games with people. I normally watch them by myself for that very reason.
Big games. I mean, you and I both, I think, been in the situation.
Been to a Super Bowl party in 40 years.
Yeah, a situation where somebody's, talking baseball in a room and talking about it, and you just kind of sit there and you just go, all right.
Well, you know what? You make a good point. So during baseball season, when I have to go out on the field, I go out through the umpire's entrance. And so sometimes I sit in the stands until it's time to go out. To hear the conversations of those in the green seats who really think they know what they're talking about, it's not good. It's not good. I just kind of put my head down. And you want to turn around and say something, and you say, that's all right. Don't worry about it, man. I'm just going to keep it moving, man.
The end of the game yesterday came when Joseph Asai late hit out of bounds on Patrick Mahomes. And watching it live, I jumped up because I thought that's terrible call. They're on Patrick Mahomes, and you see the replay, and you're like, yeah, he was a few feet out of bounds. Asai afterwards, you saw him crying on the bench. You saw him in the locker room taking questions. I don't know if you have seen the video. BJ Hill, a veteran of the Cincinnati Bengals, stood up there, right there with him, and, kind of helped him through it at the end of the game. But the 22-year-old Asai was stood up there and answered all the questions after, you can almost say he cost the team the game and chances of Super Bowl.
Well, I've heard that said before today that he cost him the game. No, there was a lot of guys that cost him the game yesterday.
And he didn't call. I mean, it still would have been a 60-yard field goal, which again probably would have been missed. And if he missed it, they go to overtime. And with the new rules of overtime, it wasn't guaranteed that the Bengals would have won the game if he just sped up the process of them losing.
Yeah. Kudos to him. Being there to stand up and to see how much his teammates surrounded him from the time he got the penalty to, when he was in the locker room. This guy's a really good player. That's the other thing. He's a really good player. He made a mistake, but you know what? I'll tell you something, Joe. I'd rather for a guy to make a mistake because of effort compared to a guy for lack of effort. And you know what? That guy can play for me any day of the week. I know people will remember him for it, but when it's all said and done, those things happen. And it could have happened to anyone else on that team. What's the difference between him and Joe Burrow throwing a pick six interception? What's the difference between somebody having a fumble? What's the difference between him and somebody missing coverage? There's so many things that go on in a game that we don't pay attention to, but we always trying to find a way to find the last mistake that was made, compared to all the mistakes that were made yesterday by Cincinnati. You think about the missed tackles, think about the holding penalties, think about all the things they could have done differently that would have given them a better chance earlier in the game than later in the game.
Yeah, and you know what? You would assume that Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and the team that's surrounding them for many years will have other chances, other opportunities in AFC championship games than what they had yesterday. So you hope the kid gets a second chance at something like that.
He'll be all right.
Yeah. So Super Bowl 57 coverage will begin on Monday here on Claibs Online. Find it there, claibsonline.com. We'll have a page dedicated to all of the interviews, all the coverage, everything that we're doing out there in Phoenix, similar to what we have going on right now. If you go to claibsonline.com, you see the spring training page up and running. And now that Claibs is off the cruise ships and out of the buffet lines there, we'll get some more pictures. We'll get some more interviews up there, especially since it's 2 weeks from today that pitchers and catchers will begin reporting. I think, is it sooner than that, or is it 2 weeks for those that are on the World Baseball Classic
It's around
roster?
The same time. I mean, I don't see where there's a lot that's really changed. It'll be interesting to see how camps will be run with the missing of certain players, but also how it's going to be run with regard to how you deal with the rules. The one thing I'm anxious to see is guys working the bullpen. Yeah. Watching them to see if they can get it done within 14 seconds.
We will, we'll talk a little more baseball, but right now we need to take a break. It is Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Ameren, Illinois, and driven by Mungenast St. Louis Acura.
St. Louis Acura has an unbeatable selection of new and pre-owned vehicles. We have over 200 vehicles on hand and in transit. Get the new 2023 MDX or Integra with up to $1,000 in loyalty. Rebates and financing as low as 3.9% for 60 months. You can also lease the 2023 MDX for as low as $599 a month. Or get a pre-owned certified MDX with 3.99% financing. St. Louis Acura, better than ever for you.
Back here, Lunch with Claibs and Joe here on claibsonline.com, powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Mungenast St. Louis Acura. Hey, Mungenast Burkhardt, Alton Toyota, who supplied Claibs with the Highlander that he took down to Jupiter, Florida, just a few weeks ago.
You know, I would say this about the Highlander. If you haven't had a chance to see it, obviously you can go by Mungenast Burkhardt, Toyota, and Alton. Go online. I mean, there's a lot of people at home today because of the weather. So when you get a chance, go online, check it out, and see for yourself. They got a good selection. They're still looking for used cars too. And if you're looking for one, they have one available for you. But I would strongly suggest this Highlander because it's got size, It's got real good balance to it. It's got a lot of room on the inside. It's got every bell and whistle you can imagine. And more importantly, it comes at a very fair price compared to some of the cars and some of the SUVs you see out there today. So if you're thinking about an SUV and you're thinking about something soon or later, I would start at Mungenast Burkhardt Toyota for all the reasons of above. And also you can go online and check them out as well and just kind of have a better idea what you're looking for. So when you do go into the store, you can tell, hey, this is what I'm looking for. I've already seen it. Let's do a deal.
And they are the official car of our spring training coverage. Really the next 2 months, all February, all March, anything spring training related, anything World Baseball Classic related. And you'll be able to find all of the writings of the commish, Rick Hummel, starting in just a few weeks too, as he makes his way down to Jupiter, Florida as a new member of our team here on Claibs Online.
We may have another new member coming up here soon.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yes.
Keep your eyes on at claibsonline.com to see what that will be. I'm excited to have that starting up as well. Let's talk a little baseball, because last week Howard Richards filled in for you, but we did the show on Monday. On Tuesday, Claibs, we find out that Scott Rowland was the lone selection to the Baseball Hall of Fame for 2023. I talked about this on Weekend Joe, so I'll just go on kind of a shorter bit of a rant on it today. I do not understand the media in other cities, whether it be Chicago or New York or wherever else, that is looking at this Scott Rowland Hall of Fame vote as a snub to other players, whether it be Mark Grace or Don Mattingly or Keith Hernandez, whoever it might be. They can be Hall of Famers too. Just because Scott Rowland was voted in, they don't need to talk shit on Scott Rowland because he got in on this vote and there are other players who are still not in the Hall of Fame. Well,
it sounds to me like there's two things. I think the writers, they try to make this more about themselves than the people they vote for. And the other thing is really three things. The other thing is, I think they've got to look at how they weight this thing, because you have people who are voting who never saw Scott Rowland play with any regularity. And you have people who are voting because they have a vote, but they really haven't done the research other than go on Baseball Reference and see what a guy's WAR was and think that he's not or is Hall of Fame worthy. And thirdly, they need to look at the system differently. In this case, Scott Rowland was a third baseman. Now, if you want to compare third baseman's numbers to other players on the field, that's fine. I don't care. But I think when you look at the situation that we had, the reason why we only had one guy go in is because the writers, in my opinion, have made this more about themselves, and they've held a lot of other people back. Because remember, none of these guys' stats got better since they retired.
Right.
So
Rowland had a huge 2021. That's what really jumped up his.
That's the only stat. But my point being, we have now turned this into more of a political or popularity contest because the numbers haven't changed. Mm-hmm. He's still a good player. You can say that about Hernandez and Jones. There's a lot of guys that are out there who have worthy numbers. It used to just you get 500 home runs, you had 300 strikeouts and things of that nature. Hit 300, you were automatic. So now we've taken that element, reduced it by a little bit, and now we're starting to look at that second tier, what you would call Hall of Famer, compared to what the gold standard has been. And that's where the argument comes into play, where people feel like, well, his WAR isn't as much, or he didn't have as many RBIs. Because if you want to play that game, I can go back and tell you why Kenny Boyer should be in the Hall of Fame along with Ron Santo.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of arguments for different players. But I think they've got to change the system. I think you should only be able to vote if you actually covered that player. And if you're a Hall of Famer, your vote weighs more. But I think to have all these people who come in now who didn't see these people play with any sort of regularity, who never covered them, who never really followed their career, when they might be clutch, I think those people, you can vote, but it doesn't mean as much because you weren't there.
Yeah, to look at that too. The one thing that gets me when you see Scott Rowland, where he started his first year on the ballot to how long it took him to get to that 75%. He started his initial ballot, the lowest initial ballot of anybody that eventually made the Hall of Fame. So he just kept increasing year after year after year without stepping foot on a baseball field. All of those years too. It takes me back to Jim Edmonds in his first year of the vote, that he was dropped off the ballot on the first year. That he got so few votes that first year that he dropped off the ballot. And I still think that's such a shame that he did get more than just that 1 year on the ballot.
Well, you may be right, but I think here's a couple of reasons why. Scott Rowland was the same guy on and off the field his entire career. You didn't hear much from him. When he spoke all. Jim Edmonds was about Jim Edmonds with regard to how he was perceived. A lot of people didn't like him. And there's another problem with the Hall of Fame voting. It's not whether I like a guy or not, but if he played well, then why not consider him? But Jim Edmonds did not run as good of a campaign, as far as dealing with media as some did. Jim was accommodating. But I know some guys who flat out just said, and that's what's wrong with this thing. Just because you don't like a guy shouldn't have anything to do with his skill set.
Yeah. Let me talk a few other things that we missed this past week.
Wait a minute. Before we go any further, I want to go back to football for a minute. Yeah. How are we doing in the standings?
In the standings, I have not. So I have. I did not look through and see who everything yet. That's usually a Tuesday or Wednesday thing for me, Claibs. Okay. Right. That I go through.
But I know I was perfect this week.
You were down 1 to Reggie Blackwell going into the picks this week, so I can quickly go and I can tell you what Reggie picked. He this past week he went with Bengals and Eagles.
So now we're tied.
And Frank went 0 for 2. Frank picked Bengals and 49ers.
Of course he did.
Yeah.
He always goes, that doesn't surprise me at all. So
Reggie it's between you, it's between you and Reggie. You guys are tied right now. I've also decided next year I'm going about this differently. And it has nothing to do with the fact that I was down. I was maybe like 5 down going into the postseason. I think we only count wins. We don't do wins and losses. We only count wins. And I think we need to add weighted games on that list too. I think we need to find a way to throw more points on for certain games, whether it be locks or upsets or something that we need to do for the picks next year.
Well, we ought to table that and have the board kind of look at that and see how that works. Yeah. All right. Now you were saying.
I would say, so I want to talk rankings here because 2 things we missed last week when you were out. MLB Network has been doing their top 10 at each position throughout all of baseball recently. Paul Goldschmidt was rated the number 1 overall first baseman. Ryan Helsley was number 10, I believe, on the closers list. Tyler O'Neill was in there for left fielders. Brendan Donovan was in there for second baseman in the top 5 or 6, I think is where he ended up on this list. For third baseman in all of baseball, American League and National League, MLB Network ranked Nolan Arenado as the 5th best third baseman in all of baseball.
Well, who were the 4? Okay, Machado,
Austin Riley, Jose Ramirez, and number 4 on the list. I know I had it
So I guess what we're looking at. So Riley in his second or third year, maybe 4, he had a big year power wise. But if you think he can carry Arenado's glove, you're sadly mistaken.
Right.
I'd put Ke'Bryan Hayes on that list before I'd put Austin Riley on that list.
Rafael Devers was number 4.
Devers is a good offensive player, good solid player. But you have to take into account that maybe they're looking at potential. Maybe they're looking to create a debate.
No, it is called top 10 right now.
Okay.
Top 10 now.
Obviously, we disagree with whoever came up with that.
Yeah.
So
it goes Machado, Ramirez, Riley, Devers, then Arenado. Then it goes Bregman, Turner, Muncy, Yandy Diaz, and DJ LeMahieu. Nolan Arenado.
DJ LeMahieu don't even play third base anymore.
Nolan Arenado, who finished 3rd in the NL MVP voting behind one of those third basemen. So if you would have put him 2nd behind Machado, I would have said, okay, you got an argument here. If you would have told me Nolan Arenado, 5th best player in all of baseball, I would have said, okay, maybe, but 5th best at his position. It seems like one of those things where, maybe they just wanted a debate out of it.
Well, and they got what they were looking for.
Yeah. And then Claibs, another list that came out, your guy, Xavier Scruggs. Did you see his list that he came out with for top 10 current baseball, top 10 current players?
Okay.
Top 10. Number 1 and 2 were Shohei and Mike Trout, which, but when you look at that, and Artie Moreno this past week said he's not selling the team. They looked at it. They decided they're not selling the team. If you have the top 2 players in the sport and you're not even sniffing the postseason year after year after year, they should force them to sell the team.
Well, that's more of an organizational miss with regard to the general managers that he's had that haven't been able to do it. And they've had a lot of injuries too. I mean, everybody they brought over, it seems like they get hurt. But I see your point.
Yeah.
Who else is on the list?
Number 3 on the list, Aaron Judge. Number 4, Juan Soto. Number 5, Bryce Harper. 6, Freddie Freeman. 7, Mookie Betts. 8, Manny Machado. 9, Nolan Arenado. And number 10, Yordan Alvarez. No Paul Goldschmidt.
That sounds to me that they were ranking guys because of their age. I think because Goldschmidt's moving closer toward the other side of his career than those other guys. That's what it sounds like to me. Where did Goldschmidt end up being ranked? Or did
he doesn't have Xavier Scruggs just gave his top 10.
Yeah, well, Xavier ought to get out more too.
You let him know that.
I mean, I can't really argue with any of those players. Now you're talking about the reigning MVP,
right?
And then maybe there should be room for that guy, especially because of his consistency throughout his career. But I can't really argue with the guys that he has on his list.
Yeah, they're all good, but to leave a reigning MVP off the list seems like you missed one.
It's a head scratcher. No, it's a head scratcher.
Hey, let's take another break here. Let's do that. We got a lot of stuff to wrap up here as we end our show for this Monday. Long list of stuff, and we will get to all of that right after this on Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Ameren, Illinois, and driven by Munganess St. Louis Acura.
There's always been a bright side to living in downstate Illinois. Ameren, Illinois is making it even brighter with a little help from the sun. Right now, we're building a next-generation solar facility to bring you cleaner energy for generations to come. It's good for the environment, your neighborhood, and everyone living in downstate Illinois. That's brighter thinking. That's energy at work. Learn how you can participate in solar programs at amerenillinois.com/renewables.
Back here at Lunch with Claibs and Joe, wrapping things up here over the next 15, 20 minutes or so. Got a lot to get to, but the top one, which will probably dominate the headlines all week long or whenever he gets to it, Claibs, LeBron James, 117 points away from passing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the most points scored in the history of the NBA. You're sitting there shaking your head. What's your issue? It's been inevitable.
Here's my issue. LeBron, and it's kind of a two-way street. LeBron has played 4 years less. But the only reason why LeBron is even in this conversation is because the guy he's chasing didn't shoot 3-pointers. Mm-hmm. So if you look at how many points LeBron has scored via the 3-point shot, he'd have to play another 4 years to catch Kareem. So right. I think it's a little bit skewed in my opinion. I'll tell you this, and LeBron's been great at every level he's been at from high school to the NBA. Kareem has been the greatest at every level from grade school, high school, college, and the NBA. And he's got the rings and the trophies to prove it. He will always be the greatest player to play because he had the unstoppable shot. He was good on both ends, and he's got the accolades to prove what a great player he was. So I kind of shrugged my shoulder because we're in the now moment. LeBron's the greatest. No, you know what? He's a really, really good player. I would never take that away from him. But just because he's a scorer, he'll have the all-time scoring title doesn't make him better than Kareem.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar during his career, where he played 155 more games right now than LeBron James has, made 15,834 field goals in his career. LeBron James right now is at 14,008 field goals for his career. So a difference of 1,800 field goals, baskets made in their careers.
Three-pointers? How many three-pointers?
Three-pointers. LeBron has made 2,228 three-pointers in his career. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar made 1 3-pointer in his career.
So that's like 6,000 points compared to 3 points. That's the difference
free throws,
right there.
by the way. Yeah, free throws, by the way. LeBron has made 1,300 more free throws in his career than Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Well, that's because he gets the calls. Kareem played in a different era where he wasn't getting the calls. If you don't believe me, ask Kent Benson. I don't know if you remember that story.
No, but LeBron didn't get the call the other day and laid on
you
the
know
court
what,
and threw
though?
a bit
How
of a
about
temper
this?
tantrum.
You know what? I tell you what. Hey, LeBron, accept the call. We'll forgive all the travels and all the offensive charges you should be getting called on.
Yeah, he's a Laker. Why? What's with the hate from you?
He's a faker, man. You know what? From a Lakers standpoint, because I am not happy with how this organization is being run. Okay. I respect LeBron's ability. I mean, he's a really good player, a very good player. But, they tried to put a collection of players together. And they tried this once before and it didn't work. And it's not going to work this time either. And while I think he's done more goodness for the game than made it detrimental, there's just some things I've just seen enough of.
So as far I was looking through here and I was scrolling down the list of all of these, all these great names, all these the point scorers throughout the history of the NBA. And you start looking at, current players, who's still on this list. That's, you scroll down, Steph Curry right now, 40th all time, 860 games played. That is 550 games less than what LeBron's played right now.
And he'll never get to 550 games. He'll never play that many.
Because of the money he's making right now, or?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you're talking about another, 6 seasons?
Yeah.
Minimum.
You don't think Steph Curry has 6 more years left in him?
No. I mean, at this point, man, they made so much money. They don't have to stick around that long.
He's not getting hit though. He's not, he's just kind of out.
He gets worn out. He gets touched up. But the bottom line is, what is Steph Curry now? 32? Do you really think you think he'll actually play till he's 38?
Steph Curry right now, wow, he's 34, Claibs.
Okay, so
he's going to be 35 in March. He'll be 35 in March.
So you think he'll be around at 40?
Nah, never mind.
Okay. Point.
Is there anybody currently that is playing right now that you could look at and you could say maybe?
No, I don't. I mean, the automatic person you would think is Durant, but Durant's got some mileage on him.
Durant injuries too. I mean, Durant right now Durant's up there on the list. He is number 14 all time right now with 26,684 points.
How old is he?
Durant's got to be up there 35. He's got to be older than Steph
No,
Curry, right?
I don't know if he's that old.
He's also 34.
Okay.
So same age as Steph Curry.
So I don't see.
And he's missed how many games has he missed in his
the
career?
Injury bug is bitten him. I just don't see a guy as we speak that's going to challenge this record. I don't see one.
You got to look at guys with big points per game right now.
Who's the closest active guy right now
to LeBron?
Yeah.
I mean, Carmelo Anthony, is he playing this year?
No, he's done.
Okay. Carmelo Anthony's number 9 on the list. Durant's number 14. Scrolling down, James Harden's at 27. Russell Westbrook's at 28.
Nope. So there you go. It's not going to happen in our lifetime.
Right. I mean, and that's where you kind of look at how many points per game some of these guys have scored. And I mean, Durant's not even Jordan had 30 points per game. Durant's at 27, same as LeBron, 27 points per game.
But they play longer.
Yeah.
And that's the key.
So it's a record, Claibs, that we might not see for a few decades.
Well, no, I think you won't see it for at least another 20 years, period. Because I think the player we're talking about that's going to break this record is probably in grade school. And the game has changed. I mean, it's a lot more offensive minded. So that has a lot to do with it. Guys are much more comfortable shooting the three. It's about beating somebody 112 to 109 now. I mean, compared to, it used to be a thing where first team got to 100 normally won.
Yeah.
And that's probably still the case. But we just have a lot more teams getting in the hundreds, man.
Claibs, the Blues are back to their struggling ways here recently. It's been such a roller coaster of a season. They gave a little hope for a bit. Thought maybe they would make a run at that last playoff spot, but losses to the Blackhawks, to the Coyotes here recently this past week it kind of shows you what the team is going to be for the rest of the year. They're not going to be able to eclipse that 8 seed, right?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, there's still hope. I think really what's got to happen, they got to make a decision on making a move and get this deadline thing behind them and just play with who you have. Defensively, they still struggle. The goaltending has been average at best. The scoring has been erratic. I mean, they just don't pay attention to detail, man. That's something I told you about early in the year. It's just not happening. It's not a coaching thing. This is a player thing where they just aren't committed. And I think you have some guys that are sitting there thinking they're going to get traded, and therefore they're in limbo. And some guys do not deal with this well. Okay. You've had a lot of injuries also that have really slowed you down. But what happens if they get healthy and somebody takes a skid? I mean, the AC is certainly winnable. And I got news for you. We've seen ACs knock off the number 1 seed in this league before. So if they get in, they could be interesting, but they've got to be better at certain positions of what they are now.
We also saw this morning too, as we stay on hockey, the passing of Bobby Hull. Brett Hull's dad died at the age of 84 earlier today. Was a really, really good hockey player back in the day, but had a few issues off the ice.
Yeah, he had an incredible career as a player. The Golden Jet, man. There was nobody when he came down the right side. He was he and Gordie Howe might have been the 2 strongest players in the league because you couldn't knock him off the puck. And this was at an era where playing the body was certainly in vogue. But he could come down the right side, throw out his right arm, and deny the defenseman the chance to score, to check him and score goals. I mean, Bobby Hull scored, I think, 50 goals in, I think, 10 of the 18 or 17 years he played. I mean, the guy was a natural goal scorer. He could shoot the puck with the best of them. He was a guy, and you have to remember, this is when you could use the big banana hook stick blade where he was shooting pucks, man. And Glenn Hall was the goalie for the Blackhawks. Glenn Hall was more terrified in practice that Bobby Hull or Dennis Hull would get a shot off and Stan Mikita than he would be in a game. Glenn Hall has a scar right under his cheek. He took a puck in practice. It went so deep that he could stick his tongue out. Yeah. Yeah, but Bobby Hull, one of the great players of the game. He was one of the first guys to jump to the WHA and gave that league credibility. Yeah, and I think he scored 70 one year in the WHA. But he was a big, strong guy. Like I said, might have been as strong as anybody in the league. But you're right. He had some off-ice issues as he got older in life, made some comments that made some people uncomfortable. But he was a delightful person to be around. The next time you talk to Rammer, ask him about the time I called him and told him I was Bobby Hull. And he actually took the bait. And we're talking for a few minutes, and I couldn't keep it any longer because I used to do a really good Bobby Hull. I could do a really good Bobby Hull. But he will be missed by the hockey world for all the contributions that he made.
Claibs, we're going to end on this note today. I saved it for the very end. I wanted to keep you in a good mood all throughout the show, but Jason Whitlock has once again made some headlines for comments that he made over the past week. I saw you were on it this past weekend on social media, so I figured I'd give you your own platform to discuss Jason Whitlock.
I've known Jason Whitlock for a long time. I knew when he was covered at the Kansas City Star, and used to be a good writer. He has now made himself one of the biggest buffoons in our industry because he, for lack of a better term, he's truly sold out. He is talking shit about things that he knows are wrong. And if you notice, there have been other media brethren who have just said, dude, what are you thinking? Is the money that mean that much to you? I mean, you decided you wanted to become this ultra black man / conservative, which is fine, but at least have a point in what you say. And we all know you're saying it just to get a paycheck and just to get a rise. And if that's what it takes to feed your family, man, then you know what? It is what it is. I know a lot of people who would never stoop to the levels that he stoops to on a regular basis. Hence the reason why I don't watch him, certainly don't read him, but his most recent comments okay, enough is enough. And, you know, he thinks he's got it like that. He's sadly mistaken. He cannot go into his own community anymore by some of the actions he's maintained here recently. And if he thinks that's how he wants to live out the rest of his life, so be it.
What do you have lined up this week now that you're back and all refreshed?
Well, the NHL All-Star Game is here in South Florida this weekend, so I'm going to spend some time down there and visit with some folks. We'll also have a chance. We'll let Howard kind of figure out where he wants to go as far as the Super Bowl is concerned, and we'll talk a little football later in the week. And we'll get back to some hockey with Alex Ferrario. Hopefully, we'll do Kevin Weeks this week and maybe line up some other people. And it's my hope that we will have the new TV voice of the St. Louis Cardinals on later this week as well. Once that announcement is made, I think it might happen today. So stay tuned for that. And that'll keep us busy for the rest of the week.
Sounds good.
Along with the two-man game, the Dr. Rick podcast, and all the other things we have, especially your weekend show. And by the way, how'd the wrestling thing go?
Well, it's gone. Hey, it's gone really well so far. That's Pro Wrestling Talk STL every Saturday morning, 10 a.m. on 590 The Fan, KFNS. John Marisek and I doing just an hour-long show, and all reports back so far have been positive. What were your thoughts on the Royal Rumble this past Saturday?
Unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to see it.
Yeah, that's too bad.
I just got back from the cruise.
Right. Forgot what day it was. I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. Because, you know, when you go on a cruise, you kind of lose track of time. I'm sure
they put the tiles on the ground for you, don't they? Throughout the cruise ship, telling you what day of the week it is.
They do that on the elevator. You're right. They do. So what I'll do is try and maybe see it on YouTube or something, in my spare time.
Yeah. Cody Rhodes won. Cody Rhodes
any kin to Dusty Rhodes?
His son. If you saw a picture of Cody Rhodes, you wouldn't have asked that question.
Okay. Well, I hadn't seen him in a while.
Yeah. Blonde hair looks exactly like his dad, aside from the big neck tattoo that he has. I don't know if Cody's a big fan of Yachty or what, but just right there on the neck.
I never understood.
It's a hideous tattoo.
I never understood that from day one, and I'm not going to try and figure it out now.
But we'll recap it again on 590 coming up this Saturday at 10 a.m. So
that's right. We need to let everybody know we're on 590 as well. We're starting to grow our brand there as well. And with all the things we have coming up content-wise, this is a good place to get all your information. You pick the sport, we've got somebody covered.
Yeah, very much looking forward to what we have coming up baseball season, as that's just a few weeks away from the people that come through the gym every day, Claibs, that know the countdown to when spring training starts, that know the countdown to pitchers and catchers reporting to the first spring training. First spring training game, first baseball game. I mean, I don't know if that happens in other cities as often as it does in St. Louis that people know.
Wait a minute. You don't think they're talking about this in Pittsburgh?
Right. They could tell you how many days until the next Steelers game.
Yeah.
in Pittsburgh,
but although I will say this, there's kind of a little bit more of a buzz around certain cities. I know down here in South Florida, the Marlins are starting to get some action as far as interest in their team.
They've made a move. I mean, they made a big move with the Twins, and Jazz Chisholm's going to go play center field.
Yeah, we'll see how that turns out. And then you got teams like Seattle and Texas and teams that we normally don't hear from that have made some legitimate moves and make themselves more relevant. So I think the next thing we ought to start watching is what guys on the normal giveaway teams are going to start paying attention to. Like, who do the Oakland A's have? Who do the Pittsburgh Pirates have? I won't even include Baltimore in that conversation anymore because Baltimore did make some movement north this year. So there's some other teams out there that Cincinnati's a team. Where are they going to do? The Cubs are going to be better than anybody in the division other than the Cardinals. So I think we ought to start looking at those teams and what players they have on those teams and what their marketability might be as we start the season.
Keep it all tuned right here to Claibs Online to find out what we have coming up for baseball season and everything we have this week. And again, I'll be in Phoenix next week. Claibs will be in Florida next week. We will have you covered nationwide for all of the big sporting events going on in the country for the month of February. That'll wrap it up for us today, as this has been another edition of Lunch with Claibs and Joe, powered by Ameren, Illinois, driven by Munganast St. Louis Acura. He is Mike Claiborne. I'm Joe Roderick. We'll talk to you next time.
From our roots in St. Louis, Royal Banks of Missouri is branching out to continue serving you with our locations in St. Charles, Jerseyville, Granite City, and now in Hannibal, Center, and New London. Royal Banks of Missouri, the community bank in your community.